What is Ralph Wiggum, the Simpsons kid who eats paste, doing in AI? Why did the two biggest coding agents on the market, OpenAI's Codex and Anthropic's Claude Code, ship a feature based on a technique named after him 12 days apart? And how did a simple, honestly stupid-looking technique make its creator hundreds of thousands of dollars in crypto? One story answers all three. July 2025. A developer named Jeffrey Huntley publishes a technique that is, at its core, one line of shellcode, a loop. It reads a text file, your prompt, pipes it into a coding agent, and the moment the agent finishes, it feeds it the exact same prompt again, and again, forever. The agent doesn't remember the last run. Nothing carries over. That's it. That's the whole invention. He named it after Ralph Wiggum on purpose. If the kid can cheerfully keep trying forever, so can the loop. And his own pitch for it, his actual words, it's deterministically bad in an undeterministic world. The world responded accordingly. The post went up on Hacker News and got 18 points. 18. Nobody cared.
And fair enough. It looks like pure brute force, right? Roll the dice enough times, working code eventually falls out. But the real mechanism is sneakier. And it starts with something nobody tells you about these models. They get worse the longer you talk to them. As the context window fills up, the conversation, the files it's read, the error dumps, the quality of what comes out drops. People who run these things all day say the slump starts somewhere past 150,000 tokens. Think of a workbench. You start clean, every tool in reach. 2 hours in, the bench is buried. Offcuts, wrappers, 3 half-finished parts stacked on top of each other. You can still work, you're just slower, and you start making mistakes you'd never make on a clean bench. That's a context window filling up. Huntley's version of the line, the more you use the context window, the worse the outcomes. So every pass, the loop wipes the bench. Brand new context window every iteration. And that sounds like throwing away everything the model just figured out, except the memory was never supposed to live in the conversation. It's on disk. The code it already wrote is in the files. There's a spec that says what done looks like. There's a to-do list it updates before it dies, and there's the Git history. The file system remembers. The chat is disposable. Forgetting, on purpose, every loop, that's the feature. Now, before we go any further, the question I always ask, who's selling me this? And look, Huntley's a real engineer. Gitpod, Canva, he ran their AI developer productivity team. Sourcegraph, building their coding agent. The man has a resume. He also writes like a guy standing on a car hood with a megaphone. Actual quotes. From the Ralph post itself, we are in post-AGI territory. All you need are tokens. From this January, software development is dead. I killed it. And he's on record predicting that by the end of this year, the majority of engineers will no longer be handwriting commits. We're halfway to that deadline. Look around. So when a guy like this tells you his bash loop built an entire programming language, you don't take the claim, you take the repo, and you keep one hand on your wallet. Hold both of those thoughts. The flagship demo. He pointed a Ralph loop at one prompt for months. Build a programming language like Go, but every keyword is Gen Z slang. The result is called cursed. A true is based, false is cringe, a function is a slay, variables are sus, you import with yeet, and the pointer symbol is the little Among Us guy. And the artifact is real. I cloned it. 250,000 lines of Zig, its own lexer, its own parser, the whole pipeline down to actual machine code. The loop wrote a compiler. Then I downloaded the official release and ran the hello world from its own README. It's segfault. No error message, no output. The program just dies. And it's not just my machine. The day Cursed launched, a user filed a crash report. Huntley said he'd look into it. 9 months on, that bug is still open and the code untouched. So the honest scorecard? A loop can produce a mountain of code. A product is a different thing. And here's where the story gets strange, because now you're holding 2 piles of evidence that don't fit together. One pile says scam, an influencer with a megaphone, a flagship demo that segfaults on Hello World, a technique named after a cartoon, and a memecoin coming. We'll get there. The other pile says legit. Through those same months, engineers with real reputations kept reporting real results. Both piles are real. So the question I actually care about, Why did serious people start taking a while loop seriously?
Part of the answer, the claim was nearly free to check. This isn't a paper you have to replicate or a product you have to buy. It's one line of bash. You can be skeptical at dinner and have an answer by breakfast. So people checked. August 2025, a hackathon team sticks a coding agent in a while loop and says it shipped 6 repos overnight. Their write-up hits the front page of Hacker News, and the thread splits right down the middle, half seeing the future, half picking the generated code apart. Both halves had a point. And the reports worth trusting were the ones that included the failures. The best notes came from Dex Horthy, who runs an AI tooling company called HumanLayer. First attempt, he points a loop at his personal task management system. Total flop. And his diagnosis became something like a law in this community. If the specs are bad, the results will be meh. Second attempt, August, a React codebase cleanup. Write the coding standards down by hand first, then let the loop grind against them for 6 hours. That one worked. Same loop both times. The whole difference was in what got written down before the loop started. The labs noticed too. It turned out Anthropic had been running a plug-in version of the loop internally, months before any of this was famous. And in January, Boris Cherny, the engineer who created Claude Code, posted his personal setup. For very long tasks, he reaches for that same plugin. I'd be careful about what that proves, though. Labs ship what users are asking for, and nobody has more riding on the software revolution story than the labs themselves. Lab adoption tells you the demand got real. It doesn't raid the idea. For grades, I look at reports like these. David Fowler, a distinguished engineer at Microsoft, pointed loops at the boring stuff, reproducing bug reports, reviewing code, a weekend experiment, about $200 in tokens, written up, costs and all. An AI architect at Amplitude ran one that shipped 102 features in a week, with a house rule that no feature counted until a recorded browser session proved it worked. Neither of those two sells agent tooling. They just published what worked and what it cost. Which raises the obvious question. If the whole trick is one line of bash, why is there a craft growing around it? Because the loop is one line the way a race car is 4 wheels and a seat. Everything that matters is in what got built around it. 4 things, mainly. First, scope. 1 item per loop. Huntley repeats it like a mantra. You cut the work into pieces small enough that each one fits in a single clean context window. And the practitioner's test for this is great. Describe the task in 1 sentence without using the word and. Build the auth system? Fails. Add the login form? Passes. If your sentence needs an and, that's 2 loops. 1 piece of fine print. Huntley himself says there's no way in heck he'd run Ralph inside an existing codebase. A model that forgets everything doesn't know what it's about to break. People do it anyway by writing the unwritten rules down first, that standards doc in the HumanLayer story. But the blank page is where the loop is safest. Second, backpressure. Every pass ends by running the compiler, the type checker, the tests. The model generates, the gates decide what's real. Failures get written to the plan file, and the next fresh model deals with them. It's why Ralph people love strict languages. A Rust compiler pushes back, and it can't be charmed. Huntley's setups allow up to 500 parallel subagents for reading code, and exactly 1 for building and testing. Reads can be sloppy. Verification is sacred. One practitioner put it best. The loop doesn't enforce quality. The tests do. Third, signage. A seasoned prompt file reads like warning signs bolted to a workshop wall, each one written after a specific accident. Huntley numbers his rules so that more 9s means more critical, and the famous one is in all caps. Do not implement placeholder or simple implementations. We want full implementations. Do it or I will yell at you. That sign exists because the model will stub out a function just to make the tests go green. Another one, never assume something isn't implemented. Search the codebase first. That sign exists because a model with no memory will happily build the same feature twice. Fourth, damage control. Circuit breakers. 3 iterations in a row with no file changes, kill the run. Iteration caps, because running without one is how people wake up to $500 API bills. Docker sandboxes, because the loop only runs with the agent's permission checks switched off, and at that point, the container wall is the only wall. That viral hackathon project got called out on Hacker News for shipping code with default passwords in it. And my favorite, the morning after protocol. You will, eventually, wake up to a codebase that doesn't compile, and your 2 moves are git reset or write a rescue prompt and make the loop clean up its own mess.
None of this is in the loop. All of it is around the loop. So by New Year's, you've got a meme on the surface and a discipline growing underneath. Then the first week of January 2026, the thing detonates. January 7th, a founder named Ryan Carson posts his Ralph workflow and wakes up to 690,000 views. His repo is now the biggest Ralph project on GitHub, 20,000 stars. The same day, VentureBeat runs a headline calling Ralph Wiggum, this is the actual headline, the biggest name in AI right now. And the name did real work here. Call it an iterative agentic harness, and you get a polite nod at a meetup. A Simpsons kid who never gets discouraged, bolted onto an agent that never stops. That gets screenshots, memes, the Ralph on the bus I'm in danger edits. The packaging was doing distribution, which also means the packaging was about to attract the other thing memes attract. Mid-January, someone not Huntley launches a Ralph memecoin on Solana. The launch platform has a feature where you can point the creator royalties at any Twitter account, and whoever made the coin pointed 99% of them at Huntley. He posted a disclaimer, and to be fair, every word of it is technically true. The token was created and is operated by the platform. He did not deploy the smart contract. He has no control over it. This is not financial advice, not affiliated with, and this is a real quote, Anthropic, Ralph Wiggum, or 20th Century Fox. Now put two timestamps next to each other. The disclaimer went up January 10th, 2 minutes past 7 in the morning UTC. 50 minutes earlier, GitHub's public event log, the record of who pushed what, which no user gets to edit, shows his account pushing the initial commit of the coin's official website, co-authored, says the commit itself, by Claude. An hour after the disclaimer, 2 more pushes from him. SEO tags, analytics, and the site itself, still on the Wayback Machine, is a pitch. Get Ralph, join the loop, royalties support his research. If crypto isn't your thing, there's a link to his paid newsletter. And he kept the royalty stream. Every trade of the coin paid him a cut. 6 figures in the first week for doing nothing. The repo quietly vanished a few weeks later, but a fork survives, history and all. I'm not going to characterize any of that. I don't have to. Within 2 weeks, the coin's market cap peaked somewhere around $50 million. Then, January 22nd, the sell-off. The wallet watchers put it at about 300 grand of the tokens themselves, not the royalty money, his actual holdings. And the price dropped 80% that day, 97 from the top eventually. And Huntley confirmed the sale himself, same morning on X. His words, "It's been a fun 2 weeks where folks have made millions trading this coin backwards and forwards. Fees have been lovely, but I too also needed to de-risk my investments. And then, I still hold Ralph, by the way. Remember, keep one hand on your wallet? This is why." So, a dead coin and a language that segfaults. That should be the obituary. Except, on February 5th, Anthropic's engineering blog publishes a post that says, "I built a harness that sticks Claude in a simple loop. If you've seen Ralph Loop, this should look familiar." A researcher named Nicholas Carlini wanted to know how far the loop goes if you do it seriously. So, 16 copies of the loop running in parallel. Every iteration spawns a brand new Claude session in a fresh container, full Ralph, the bench wiped every single pass. The only shared memory is a Git repository. Agents claim tasks by writing files with Git itself as the lock. The job? Write a C compiler from scratch in Rust. It ran for 2 weeks, nearly 2,000 sessions, just under 20 grand. The result is a 100,000-line compiler that compiles the Linux kernel on x86, ARM, and RISC-V. It compiles SQLite, PostgreSQL, FFmpeg. It passes 99% of the standard compiler test suites, including GCC's famously named torture tests. And because everything in computing eventually arrives here, it compiles Doom. And Doom runs. Carlini also published the caveats right next to the brag. The compiler cheats. For the ancient 16-bit boot code, it quietly calls out to GCC. It has no assembler or linker of its own. Its output runs slower than GCC with optimizations turned off. And the skeptics have a fair point here too. C compilers are some of the most thoroughly documented software on Earth. So this is not a model inventing the unknown. What it proves, a fresh context loop can grind on one hard project for weeks without falling apart. That's the honest claim. And it's enough. Now, hold those two side by side. Cursed, 250,000 lines that segfault on Hello World, abandoned at launch. The compiler, numbers published, cheats admitted, the kernel compiles and Doom runs. Same one-line idea underneath both. The difference is everything wrapped around it. The specs, the gates, the discipline. The loop amplifies whoever's holding it.
Which brings us back to this spring. April 30th, OpenAI ships /goal in Codex, and a team member announces it as, their words, our take on the Ralph loop. 12 days later, Claude Code ships its own /goal. Type a condition, walk away, and the agent works until a model confirms the condition is met. The bash meme is now a product feature in both flagship agents. Both labs made the same choice though. Claude Code's version, after every turn, a small, fast model gets the goal, and this is from the docs, the conversation so far, and votes, done or not done. The conversation so far. The context accumulates. When it fills up, it gets compressed. Codex is the same. One continuous thread, a reminder note injected every turn. So they ship the loop, they ship the stop condition. Neither one wipes the bench. The single idea this whole thing started from, the forgetting, is the one part that didn't make it into the product. The purists caught it immediately. They'd seen this move before. That plugin Anthropic ran internally and later shipped publicly also kept everything in one session, and Huntley's review of it was 3 words: it ain't it. On New Year's Day, he and Hawthy ran the head-to-head on a live stream, official plugin versus dumb bash loop, same project, and came away recommending the bash loop. Someone even filed a GitHub issue arguing that trapping Claude in an infinite loop violates Anthropic's model welfare commitments, which is the most 2026 sentence I will say today. Zoom out far enough, and the whole saga starts to look inevitable. Underneath it all, there's one simple force. People want their tokens working while they sleep. Hands-off beats optimal. We'll cheerfully accept retries, dead ends, a little waste, as long as the thing runs unattended. The Ralph loop is a crockpot. A chef standing at the stove beats it every single time, and it doesn't matter because the crockpot works the night shift. Some version of loop until done was always going to emerge. It just needed a name dumb enough to spread. The same week I'm making this video, Huntley keynoted a conference in Melbourne about what comes after Ralph. The coin is dead. The language never ran. And the idea is doing fine. Because the idea was never really the loop. It's that an agent on a long job lives or dies by what it's allowed to remember, and a file system full of specs beats a head full of fog. The labs shipped the part of Ralph that never gives up. The practitioners kept the part that made him work in the first place. Every single morning, the kid wakes up brand new.